So, I've been researching gender ideology and what they call queer theory lately, in order to write a paper on it for Red America, sort of trying to understand it on a scientific level, right? And that should be ready by next month's issue, by the way, for anyone interested. Um, anyway, I've been doing this research and forcing myself to read all of this sort of wild idealist psychobabble, right? And as I have, I've discovered that this stuff grinds my gears even more than I thought it would. Like, what we see on the surface is bad, but once you start digging into it a little, it gets so much worse. Like major foundational theorists being mostly pedophiles, sex offenders, and emotionally disturbed fetishists worse. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Are you guys ready? I mean, I assume you are, since the NGO is pushing this stuff and spending millions and millions of dollars really to push it on our children. By the way, they've been incredibly vicious and sleazy the way they go after everyone who refuses to toe the line. And what's up with that, by the way? That's a whole nother bag of bananas that we don't even have time for. Why it's pushed with such vitriol. But anyway, like if you say reality is real, water is wet, and up isn't down in response to any of their directives from on high, they will literally try to ruin your life. So I'm betting all of you are familiar with that. And so you're ready for this. I know I am. I'm speaking from experience here. They've come after me more times than I can count. They've given my personal information to neo-Nazis. They've taken that and then spread lies about it, spread other lies they've just made up, slander campaigns, you name it. These middle-class scumbags have done it, seriously. But this ain't about me, right? Like listing all the crazy stuff that they do to try to enforce their ideology and get me to, bow down, which I'm never going to do. Sorry. Let's get into the gear grinding already. It's going to be kind of a deep one. So grab a beer or a pop or whatever if you don't drink beer and crack it open and get comfortable, because we're going to deconstruct the deconstructors. So in doing that, first, a lot of you guys are probably asking, what is queer theory? Anyway, right? Because it's hard to get a straight answer, to tell you the truth. I mean, if you ask a fake leftist about it, the people who are always talking about it and calling everything queer and regular people queer phobes, they'll basically tell you it's about queer liberation, which isn't helpful, right? As it's just using the word to define itself. And then they sort of talk in circles around that, using all kinds of hip academic jargon that you haven't ever heard before, basically turning the whole thing into the academia version of like a kale smoothie, right? All the hipsters pretend to love it because it's so hip and cool, but nobody has a goddamn idea what's actually in it. And to tell you the truth, we can all smell something disturbing from that cup from way over here, Anyway, they basically sort of what's the word I'm looking for? They basically try to use queer as a stand-in for gay a lot of the time, right? Which could not be further from the truth, by the way. We'll get to what queer means, but first we need to discuss what this theory actually is, right? What it develops out of, what necessarily had to lead to it. And without going into like a long dissertation, let's basically just sum it up by saying that it's an offshoot of postmodernism, and we'll leave it at that. Postmodernism is basically this hyper individualist mess that tells you, hey man, like what's up, man? Did you know that like nothing's actually real, man? Like even our identities, man, they're like not historically derived reflections of like what creates them as we develop into the people we are. Like Americans speaking English, eating with forks and all that, man. No, man. Actually, that's all just a social construct, man. And reality is just about competing narratives that we tell ourselves, man. Well, I guess that's how you describe it in the new left era that it came out of. If we want to update it for the 2020s, they would just sort of type LMAO and LOL a lot to sort of imply their condescension while being objectively wrong and never interrogating anything they say. Either way, the logic of postmodernism reduces everything down to narratives, right? And the what is reality basically has to become the narrative of whoever has the power to enforce their narratives over others. Now that we know that, right, the viciousness and the vitriol of the people who subscribe to this queer theory becomes a little more understandable, right? And it's like, look, thanks for these brilliant insights about narratives and wasting entire books playing with language in order to deconstruct the fact that I have a ding dong, Judith Butler. But I read your whole book and it didn't change that fact, regardless of how hard I thought about it. So maybe, just maybe, material reality is primary after all, and the Marxists have been right all along. Maybe, I don't know. I am a quote unquote queer phobe, though, if you believe hard enough, I guess. And on that point, by the way, who, my friends, who has the power to enforce their narrative on all the hipster college kids through its vast network of NGOs, media, and academic institutions? I'll give you a hint. It starts with a B, it rhymes with bourgeoisie. I think you can figure that one out for yourselves, right? And I also think the viciousness these middle-class clowns push their narratives with makes a lot more sense now that we have that part, right? Reality isn't primary for them. Whoever has the power to say what reality is, that for them is the creator of reality. I know, it's crazy, right? Anyway, coffee. Anyway, queer theory is basically the ultimate reactionary ideology disguised as progressive. It is very literally the reaction to the advances in American society after the Civil Rights Revolution, a bulwark against advance of the class struggle, which we Marxists obviously know is the form social advance must take, right? They're always talking about deconstructing everything, and that catches people up in this messy sort of idealist net, always knee deep in these deconstructions and wasting all their time and energy trying to logically deconstruct gender norms and other, social mores so much that they never actually construct anything. And they basically tell us that if we do this, we're doing queer liberation, which they pretend is somehow good for gay people or even has anything to do with gay people. It's like taking apart a toaster, right? And then saying, look, I've liberated the bread from the oppression of toasting. And you're standing there looking around and you're going, no, dude, you haven't. You just made a mess in my kitchen. And now nobody gets any toast. So what's queer mean anyway, right? That's what this revolves around, because they always try to tell you it means gay, and it does not. Basically, it's a verb. To queer something is to view every cultural norm that's ever existed as inherently oppressive on the individual. And by the way, this is where we get to its anarchist roots, right? The hyper-individualism. And we add to that to literally think and talk hard enough to change them, to queer them, and assert your individual right to hate it over the sensibilities of the entire proletariat. And they want to queer everything these days. Oh, you're going to queer literature, right? Queer history, queer breakfast cereal. What does that even mean? It's like someone took a thesaurus and threw it in a blender and just called it theory. Queering things is just a fancy way of saying, let's take something that already exists, slap some paint on it, pretend we represent gay people who mostly want nothing to do with us, and then we'll call this mess we made revolutionary. Spoiler alert, it's not. It's just stupid. You can't queer capitalism out of existence. You can't queer away exploitation. All you're doing is making everything sound like a grad student's dissertation or an HR meeting. That's it. There is a reason it is Marxism Leninism that won revolutions in the 20th century, and a reason it is Marxism Leninism leading the entire world into the future right now, because it is grounded in dialectical logic and a materialist outlook. It can understand that the real world actually exists. It's not just narrative. So much for the connection to Marxism, right? Sorry, James Lindsay or whatever. I'll tell you right now, I am one of the leaders of the American Communist Party, and we have nothing to do with this crazy stuff. In fact, everything we stand for is an embrace of the proletariat as the future of all humanity. The queer theorists, their point, and this is a big thing for all the post-whatever thinkers like, Jacques Derrida and them, is to queer the supposed binary between the oppressive social norms that are telling them that water is wet, and to put everything on a vast, infinite spectrum, right? Because that binary is somehow oppressing the individual. And this is where Judith Butler and gender ideology enters the picture. This is what they're talking about. They're queering gender. A lot of them will deny it when you talk about it these days, but only a couple years ago, a very short couple years ago, there was a giant presence for this on the Tumblr app, and they listed over 60 different distinct genders that they were serious about, including some that were, I'm quoting here, spirit animals. I'm not making that up. I seriously am not. I wish I was. But that's how bizarre this gets. And while we're on the topic of bizarre, why do you guys think that it gets so bizarre? Right? Because feelings are an inherently murky and individual thing. And the inherently hyper-individualist idealism of this ideology basically tells you that your gender is whatever you feel like it is on a purely subjective level. You must ignore all of the material history that went into creating you at this moment and who you are and how that affects your understanding of it. You must ignore the fact that you were born with either a ding-dong or a doodad or you know what I mean. I don't know what words will get us throttled via YouTube these days. So you guys get the toddler version, I guess. Ding-dongs and doodads, right? Which is fitting for the subject matter anyway. So, there's that. Anyway, because reality itself is only a constructed narrative for them, gender must be the same, right? And however you feel, that's your narrative, and it's the real you, despite the material reality of the situation. But the problem is, feelings are murky, right? They live in an area even below language and are very hard to pinpoint most of the time, really. Describe the feeling of being happy, right? It's hard to do. It's a feeling. The word and all words really actually come after the phenomenon, secondary to it. To try to put that feeling or thing or whatever into a category that we can use to discuss between each other, right? Which is actually a product of what makes us human in the first place, which is labor, right? And the need to coordinate to do that. But that's another whole bag of bananas. We can get into that later. But the queer theory gets this backwards. And this is what really grinds my gears, right? Because these hyper-individualist idealists pretend to be Marxists. And this is one of the very, 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 very first basic points in Marxism. Material reality is primary, and thought is a reflection of it. I'm not saying people's feelings aren't valid or real or whatever. They are, but they are not what creates reality. Reality is what creates them. And this is a product of the hyper alienation of modern bourgeois society, right? We are so alienated from what makes us human. Our labor is so far removed from us, owned by someone else, which is owned by someone else and financialized by someone else, that we no longer feel whole in our own bodies, right? That's where all of this comes from. We don't even need to get into, what concrete thought is. We can just stay at this basic level, right? But gender ideology just doesn't see it that way. For gender ideology, the feeling is not only primary, but actually controls the material. You must change the material in order to match the ideal. And it's like, I don't care if you think that, right? But the bank is going to take my house if I try to make my mortgage payment in feelings and narratives. So, maybe material reality matters after all, And this need to enforce their narratives on reality, meaning people, right, is how they've alienated the vast majority of the working class, especially the industrial proletariat. It's completely disconnected from the material realities of most people's lives. It just is. It's the ideology of the privileged academic elite who can afford to sit around and debate the nuances of gender performativity or schedule a 3-hour panel discussion about the heteronormative implications of effing Barbie movies or whatever, while the rest of us are working 10 or 12-hour shifts just to stay afloat. And this is without getting into the severe problems of the people who developed this theory. Michel Foucault is basically known as the godfather of this entire thing. And he was calling age of consent laws oppressive to children. Think about that. And honestly, that's how the entire thing is framed in the tradition, that children should be free from the mean authoritarianism of their parents. It's why they develop notions of trans children and all kinds of other things, which is why parents can get horrified that such things are being pushed in schools, right? If you have kids, you know that they are sponges. They are soaking up everything around them, and they are very, very easily influenced. If you tell a boy he's actually a girl because he likes traditionally feminine things, he has no reason not to believe you. And I mean, there are countless stories of this kind of thing happening. And it pushes a child who is not yet capable of independent decision making or even understanding the long-term consequences of minor things, let alone the consequences of things like blocking his puberty with drugs. He just knows what you tell him and he trusts you, and you're destroying his life in a way. A lot of these kids who do this and are told this is somehow medical care are not able to have orgasms throughout their entire lives afterwards. Not to mention the emotional instability messing with your hormone levels causes. Think about it, right? Not only that, you're told your entire body is wrong, and people you love and trust are reinforcing this for you. And we wonder why we're giving them record suicide rates. I really don't think we need to wonder. But look, at the end of the day, we all gave this thing a chance, right? And it is the vitriol that is required this sort of response. But forget all that. Freedom is always going to be insight into necessity, right? And as long as you are only expressing yourself and not forcing anyone to do anything or manipulating anyone else or, whatever, like, do you. But we got real problems to deal with. The empire of our ruling class is crumbling, and we need to figure out how to get our class in power now. Not after we figure out how to queer the class struggle. Now. We just can't afford to sit around and liberate bread from toasters anymore. We just can't. Sorry.
Hi. High Sheriff Hazard is a hard man to be. High Sheriff is his only plan. He digs through pockets, takes what he can, for he's High Sheriff Hazard. He caught me one evening, and here's what he said: "You look like a Russian, you look like a red, and if you're fond of your skin and your head, beware the High Sheriff of Hazard." The answer is simple, the answer is clear. We all get together, ain't got nothing to fear. We throw the old bastard right out on his ear. Farewell to High Sheriff Hazard.
What's up, everybody? I'm Noah. This is Noah's show. Down below me there is the awesomest guy I've ever met. His name's Sebastian, and he's been working for the Institute forever, and he's producing this show now. And I got to say, it has improved like crazy since he started. What's up, brother? How you doing tonight?
Hey, what's up? How's your night? It's good for myself as well. And
My
I just
night is
wa-
never ending, apparently.
I just wanted to say to anyone in the chat who wants to discuss any of this, please feel free to hop in the call, because I've been seeing some messages, and I promise you guys agree more than you'd think, and there's a lot that you're really just not listening about. Like, no one is saying that these people can't be a part of the class struggle. We're just saying, it's not about all these individual struggles. No one is saying these people don't exist or can't fight alongside us.
Yeah. Look, it's weird that like every time we bring this up, the argument against us is like about things that we've never said. You know, it's wild. Like I don't know. I try not to watch the chat sometimes until we get. Oh, speaking of that, Mac gifted a membership. What's up, Mac? Thank you. Mac is awesome. He's from the RTSG research think tank, and he joins us from time to time to debunk anti-communist narratives. And he does a great job at it. So thank you. Whoever wants that membership, scoop it up, because they really do go quick nowadays. But yeah, it's wild. Like I often say that every single anti-communist argument begins with a lie, right? They're like, you said this. No, I didn't. I know what I said. I know what I think. I'm the person thinking it, actually, right? So no, you're not going to tell me I think X when I've never thought X in my life. If you want to actually talk, we need to talk. You can't just yell at me about something that has nothing to do with me, right?
Yeah, and I think this is down to part of the success of the ruling class in doing this, actually, because effectively what they've done is successfully been able to associate queer theory with gayness, or just being a gay person. Being like, that's not what this is about at all. This is not what we're talking about. And everyone's free to fight alongside us. This is a fight against the people up, not the people next to you.
Right, exactly. And like, here's my thing. Look, being a communist isn't for everyone, right? You need to be a really dedicated person to be able to dedicate your entire life to the liberation of the working class, right? And that's not like a knock on people who don't have that or have their families more important or whatever it is, right? A lot of time people like get in this sort of like fake left bubble where they mistake a movement, which is this like vague sort of amorphous blob, for actual organized action, right? Like, to be a communist, it's not just something you decide to call yourself, it's someone that actually takes part in the transition to a higher mode of society. Therefore, someone has to be in their country's communist party. Someone has to be looking at things through Marxism, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay if you don't do any of that stuff. But for Marxism, for an actual materialist worldview, it's the reality that is primary, right? That's what I was ranting about in the opening, which that just reminded me, I totally forgot to change our background back. We should just keep the normal one up. There we go. Yeah, I don't know. It's strange to me that like that's the kind of thing. But here's the thing. Half the time, these people they don't want to have a conversation, right? Because it isn't about actually getting to the truth. It's this narrative thing, right? Whoever has the power to control the narrative controls reality for them. So what they do is the whole, doxing and lying and slandering and that kind of thing, rather than just discussing things. They call names, etc. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm sure a lot of these people do think in doing that sort of stuff they are liberating whomever, but you really have to think like, is the side that's on the correct side of history really going to be marching alongside Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, or are they going to be in a true Marxist-Leninist revolutionary party? If
Right.
you're constantly fighting against the actual communists and you're on the side of the weapons manufacturers, there's no liberation there.
Look, Kamala Harris is doing pronoun checks. We have trans admirals in our Navy. The CIA is making woke ads. Citigroup flies a trans flag at their main offices. This isn't a grassroots movement. It is the ideology of the ruling class. And if you can't accept that, then again, it's a problem with your ability to understand material reality and not your narrative as primary, right? That's a neat little trick of postmodernism. If it's all competing narratives, that reality that the ruling class is woke can be just, sort of argued out of existence, right? We can say, oh, they're just cynical about it. Oh, this is just so popular, they have to pander to me. When it's what, like less than 1% of the population? How is this tiny, insignificant number of people occupying such a large chunk of everyone's attention? Ask yourself that, and then ask who pushes narratives in a big way other than the ruling class. Nobody.
Right, and I don't know. Even in an ideal world, let's give them everything they want. Let's say there's no oppression, there's no antagonisms between people. Let's just say the ruling class is just entirely made up of gay and trans. How does that change the situation? There's still gay capitalists versus gay regular folks. It doesn't change the order of affairs. It doesn't change any class antagonism. And also, to anyone who's trying to call in, the link is discord.gg/midwesternmarks. You might have to scroll down to find it, but there's a room called Waiting Room under the
You got to follow the rules, like actually read them. Can you put a link in the chat for us, Sebastian?
Yep.
Thanks. Look, and I knew this would come up. the proletariat that are misguided and transphobic about puberty blockers, instead of conceding to their reactionary beliefs, tailism. This seems like a bot that just got kind of malfunctioned here, but this is what the fake leftists always say. No, that one, even if that's what was happening, that would not be tailism. Please learn what these words are used for in Marxism before you use them. Tailism is a real thing.
Yeah.
Maybe, just maybe, you should interrogate your own dogma in the fact that telling a child to stop puberty it may be wrong. And it's not reactionary to question that. Like, do you even know what reactionary means? Of course you don't. You're just using it because this is like a hip thing for you to say. Reactionary is backwards progress in society.
Yeah.
How does progress happen? Class struggle. The history of all hitherto society is the history of class struggles. Different forms of the class struggle happening in different times and places, right? So backwards struggle in the US would be to sort of go back to the sort of British Empire colonialism, and yeah, Michael asks, yeah, tailism is sort of what the old party does. Are they even still around? They might be. I don't know. The old CPUSA, that sort of the liberal clique that took over the old institution before we reconstituted it as the American Communist Party. Whatever the Democrats say, that's what they do, right? And they take every little like movement and they follow along behind it, creating a tail, right? It's not meeting the working class where they are. There's this middle class conceit that I cannot stand, that leftists are inherently superior and smarter than working class people who, for the most part, are far more advanced on a level of class consciousness than these leftists are. But what they do is they're like, okay, maybe we go to people who are objectively wrong, and then we bring them and teach them our enlightened ways, right? And we make them what we are. That is so condescending, and it's no wonder that the working class mostly hates these people when that's how you treat us. You know, we got a super chat from Victor Garcia Hopper who says, Noah, if you want people to debate in your show, I think it would be much more efficient if you make an X space. That's how Haas does it. Yeah, we've thought about that. I do them from time to time. I'm here every Monday anyway. That's all. But thank you for that, Victor. Anyway, there's a lot more going on than this in the world. One of the biggest events in American history is happening right now as we speak. Donald Trump and the new Doge thing, the Department of Government Efficiency, are talking about, and they look serious about destroying USAID. Mm-hmm. Now, for anyone who, may live in some kind of like libertarian cave where they don't want to talk to anyone else, USAID is basically the NGO of the ruling class engaged in what they call regime change, destabilizing other countries so that our ruling class can come in there and force dependency on their people, right? This is remarkable that this is happening. I don't know. Before we really get into it, what do you think about it, Sebastian? Have you heard anything?
Yeah, the USAID stuff. I mean, at the very least, it's thrown a monkey wrench in the works. I mean, even if it gets reconstituted as part of the State Department, the mask has slipped fully. Mm-hmm. They can't hide under the plausible deniability of humanitarian efforts they have to be transparent about their dealing, or at least more transparent, you know. But
Yeah.
even if you think this is really all in name only, or all for show, it does have a material impact.
Well, look, who are the people that make money from these what they call soft power games? And by the way, this is even getting without going into what could come next, the National Endowment for Democracy, the entire like K Street think tank complex. But who makes the money from this? It's actually Trump's opponents in the ruling class, the ones who have been using lawfare against him, right? So it makes perfect sense to go after their institutions for him, right? And it's just maybe a happy coincidence that the working class can win out in this. And it's really a really progressive thing, and it's going to promote world peace. I mean, it really has. Now, there's two ways they can go with this. One, they can get rid of it entirely, right? Which is possible. And by the way, if you're trying to get on the Discord, read the rules. I cannot say that enough. There are things in the rules that tell you what to do. Anyway, one, they can get rid of it, right? And that's a win. Two, they can, and this looks like what they want to do, they can wrap it up into the State Department, right? Now, a lot of people are saying, well, this is just the same thing, right? They're going to be still doing the same thing, just under a different banner, but that isn't the case, right? With USAID, the NED, all these NGOs, they had plausible deniability, for one. For two, they're private institutions, technically. They can do whatever they want. The State Department, every dime they spend has to get reported, right? So when they're propping up a protest, every stupid Ukrainian flag they buy needs reported. Every protester they pay needs reported. All the salaries of the NGOs, they need reported. That's cool, Sebastian. All that needs reported, right? So that's, again, a huge change. The secrecy gets destroyed, right? That's even without talking about the possibility, and this is a likely possibility, of congressional oversight, which means it could be public information, which is huge and can prevent them doing what they use this for. Look, this is seriously a big deal. And there's one more thing we got to talk about this before we start all the calls. And that is that at the end of every organized form of state, as it runs up against the impossibility of continuing on in the old way, there are always radical changes like this. The attempt to reform the problems away, except the contradiction is deeper than the symptoms that it creates, right? Think about Gorbachev, right? And perestroika and glasnost, right? Think about fascism itself was an attempt to overcome the contradictions within capitalism, and those fall. And so I see this as a sign that the ruling class that we currently have, its time is nearing an end. And if we don't get off our asses and do something, we are seriously going to end up in chaos. Like the old quote, it's either socialism or barbarism. That's it. All right. I'm excited for tonight. I'm sure that Sebastian is lining up a bunch of good calls right now. We're going to give him a minute to do that because I kept him way too long tonight. I'm supposed to like let him go and do his job, but what are you going to do, right? I'm out of coffee though, which kind of sucks. I've been up for so since 3 a.m. That's 12 15 17 hours now. I need a lot of coffee. But whatever. I'll switch to seltzer. My wife will yell at me if I drink more coffee. But yeah, look, guys, at the end of the day, there's Marxism and there's not Marxism, and I am just sick to death of frauds. Like, if you're not a Marxist, that's fine, right? That is absolutely fine. Just be real about it. If you don't understand Marxism, don't lie to me and tell me you do, right? Because you want to make a fashion statement. Battle Cossack with the 50 Argentinian bucks. Thanks, brother. He says, so sick of the culture war. Doesn't seem to lead anywhere. Its purpose is to distract both the left and the right with these issues. Yeah, it kind of is. Look, it's like culture is like a direct reflection of where society is economically, right? They inform each other, culture and economy, base and superstructure, right? The relationship is, the economic base creates the superstructure, right? Which then flips cause and effect, because that's what happens in everything. And the superstructure begins reinforcing and recreating that base. So, for example, for actually a good one for postmodernists and all the post-colonialism, all that nonsense, they say that the institution of chattel slavery was created by racism, right? That Europeans were just inherently racist and mean, and so they created chattel slavery as an outgrowth of this. This is, their idea creating reality and not the other way around. Marxism says, no, that's not correct. It's actually that chattel slavery itself created not only racism, but race. Really, the particular concept that we call race gets created by this institution of chattel slavery that was brought about in the transition to industrial capitalism, especially in America, right? Because this, what Du Bois calls the black proletariat, are creating commodities, and this is like a form of value extraction. We don't have to go into all that, but you see what I mean? So institution, economy, base, chattel slavery creates racism. Then racism, all through the 19th and 20th century, Jim Crow, right? After the Second Revolution, is then recreating the base, right? It's reinforcing capitalism, right? What was the old party famous for? It was the first integrated political organization in the nation, right? Their slogans were things like black and white, unite and fight, right? Because it was acknowledging that this is our form of class struggle. Anyway, let's get to the show already. We've been BSing for like an hour. Who's our first call, Sebastian? Oh, hold on. Don't tell me yet. Don't tell me yet. I got to share my screen. I'm an idiot. There we go. Now tell me.
Yeah, and just a reminder to anyone who may be listening, try not to talk over Noah.
Thank you.
The first caller is Element, and he just wants to discuss about the trans topic. He had some issues with the way that you were wording stuff, and
did he?
Wanted to talk through it.
Okay. What's up, Element? How you doing tonight, brother? Oh, no, there he is. What's up, Element? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Just got back from classes and whatnot.
Classes, a college student. who is arguing with me on the trans topic. That is not unusual. So what's up?
All right. Sure.
What's up? The floor is yours, brother. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I've never done this before, but so like, what's the your issue like with trans people specifically? You know,
I don't
and like
have
I'm
one.
like, oh, okay, great. Well, to preface too, like I'm a huge fan of the ACP. Like I love what you guys are doing. I unfortunately don't have the time to join.
That's fine.
Yeah. So, but I've heard a lot of things that, you know, I'm not going to say that you're transphobic or the party is or something, but you were saying that like the puberty blockers are terrible and all this stuff. Like
Puberty blockers
what's going on with
for children. If you're preventing your puberty, look,
that?
do you have kids?
No, fuck that.
I do. I have a teenager.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's something. I mean, you could read about it too, but when you're a
I have
parent,
siblings.
you know that like your kids are not capable of making informed, responsible decisions on their own life yet. That's what you're there to help them learn how to do, right? You're there to sort
Sure.
of help them become a responsible adult, right? And my son is 15. I'm helping him become a responsible man, right?
That makes sense.
The
Yeah.
problem is
I guess
when they're that young, their identity is very murky, right? There's no set thing that like if you feel this way, you're this. If you feel that way, you're that. You're you. Your biology creates your thought process in part. I mean, these are all chemicals going up through your brain, synapses, etc. And when you do something like block puberty, this is a life-altering decision that you are not yet capable of understanding the ramifications of. There are horrible side effects, right? Horrible ones, like literally not being able to have an orgasm in your entire life. Imagine going through life unable to have the entire reproduction process, which is what a lot of people
now let me
of life, right?
All right.
So do you
now,
see what I
would
mean? Like
disagree with that.
it's that they can't make an informed decision, and adults are therefore pushing it on them.
Okay, two things. One, to my knowledge, the only side effects that puberty blockers do have is like the decrease in like bone density by like a couple percentage points. And that's like what you could supplement that with fucking vitamins and some medication for
You
that.
should look into it then, because it's a lot scarier than that, brother.
Yeah. Well, to my knowledge, that's all there is. Like that's the possible side effects. And in case someone well, I would disagree.
Well,
and you had a time to talk. Now let me talk.
I just want to be before we say incorrect. I say like we're not going to look up facts now, but look it up. Like you can find this stuff rather easily. Go ahead.
Yeah. What the side effects of puberty blockers?
Go ahead with what you were going to say.
Okay. Yeah, like, and in case like the kid doesn't like it or doesn't feel trans or whatever, they could just go off the puberty blockers and their puberty just continues. Like the growth of the kid doesn't stop because you put puberty blockers on them. The hormone changing or the sex changing hormones in puberty is what stops. The kid still grows. Just the sex changing hormones don't. And that gives the kid the choice or the opportunity to figure out, hey, am I trans? Oh, I'm not. Oh, let's get off the puberty blockers and continue going as, whatever I was going as.
My question is like, why are you so interested in making this kid believe they're trans or not?
So for me, at least, it's not about like, oh, I want to make sure these kids are they're gonna be trans. Like,
well,
no,
otherwise,
man. Like,
I mean, what else are you doing?
Well, for me,
we were fine without this for the entire history of humanity.
Wait, say it again.
We were fine without this for the entire history of humanity. We begin this, we call it medical treatment, and now these people have record suicide rates. I don't think that's I think disconnected.
I think the only reason why we see record suicides is that we're now recording it being trans. Like back in the day, like there are historical records of trans people living in history. Like trans people have always been around. Like this shit's recorded. But the issue is you don't think so? I mean, I got the
this is a very, very different phenomenon. In Marxism, we have a thing called the dialectic of form and content, right? Or the dialectic of universal in particular, that you have different forms of a phenomenon going on in different times and places. Like, for example, in America, the primary form of class struggle has been the Black freedom movement at different points, right? That doesn't mean the union movement wasn't also class struggle, but it's a different form of it. So this is very different in its form, in its content than the other things in the past, right? I've heard all of the there have been all these, different native tribes in pre-modern times that had people who said they had two souls and this and that. That's
not really what I was talking about.
They weren't calling messing with their hormones medical care, and that's what bothers me. Look, the fact is that this is pushed on kids, right? If you want to, you can express yourself any way you want, right? That's freedom. More power to you. But when you push it on children who do not yet have the capacity to understand irreversible changes they're making, in just the history, even if you don't want to look into the problems later in life that this causes, even if you don't believe me about that, just the history going into building them and who they become when you modify their hormones, which controls how they feel, right? On a by the second basis is a problem.
Yeah, but
what you're doing is you're telling all of these children. What you're doing is you're telling all of these children that because of a feeling you can't even name, your body is wrong. And that is severely messed up, brother.
But they can name it, and we have a medical term.
It's called gender dysphoria. It's a feeling. The word doesn't come first. The feeling comes from a certain, when the word describes it, right? The word is describing a feeling.
They're describing something that's a medical, like known phenomenon, which is gender dysphoria.
Phenomenon. I disagree.
Well, how is it not? We've had this. This is recorded. Like this is recorded history. This has been going on for the last ever since humans. Like whatever. We don't even have to talk about the indigenous gender roles. Whatever. Like I'm not too into it. Like I don't know much about it. But what I do know is in early American history, there are records of trans people existing in different parts of the country. Not to mention in Asia, Europe, Africa. Like this isn't some the liberals are making these kids turn trans. It's like, no, man, like this has been going on for a while. And now we're just giving kids the opportunity if they want to.
It is pushed from liberal institutions. There's a marked uptick in the people who say they are trans. You think, do you really not think that social, like peer pressure is a thing?
What, of course, peer pressure is a thing. But if you think that kids are
how did it raise by like massive amounts in a number of years? We never talked about it. Now it's every conversation.
So let me give you an analogy,
etc.
Let me give you an analogy.
Well, answer my question first.
Well, okay. Like how is there such an
increase happen? What is your explanation?
Because there's more recognition of it.
No.
There's more.
You have to recognize something happening. Are you saying it was always everywhere, and people are just?
Yes, it was. Hold on, it was always everywhere. But the medical records of these things happening was just the last 40
evidence whatsoever.
Oh, I thought you said we weren't going to be looking up like fact checking right here.
Come on, man. You can't actually believe this, that everyone was just keeping this secret and now they're not.
It's not a secret. If it was a secret, it wouldn't be historical.
Look.
Am I wrong? Like if it was a secret, it would be historical.
You really need to look into like actual like child development if you want to talk about the children issue, right? We can talk about just like transgenders, whatever. That's fine. But we're talking about children right now and how children
I think we're gonna
develop, right? And this
I'm going to talk to you
in schools.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on this specific point. I don't think we're getting anywhere. But I did want to ask you another question, though.
Sure. What's
concerning, I like the ACP. And I know there's a lot of people online that are like, oh, the ACP is transphobic. They hate trans people. They hate gay people. And it's like, it's not true.
right?
Like, I know it's not, of course. They don't have some statement saying, oh, yeah, we're going to, fuck trans people. No, they're not saying that, of course.
Actually,
I
our
guess-
bylaws literally prevent any discrimination on any basis.
Yeah, that's
So there's that.
great. I guess the issue that a lot of people have been having is like, there isn't like a bare minimum. I guess for me, I think I'd be a lot more comfortable like supporting the ACP if I knew that, that they wouldn't go backwards with trans rights, like you get it?
Look, we are concerned about the absolutely pressing issues of the working class.
Yes,
If
I
you
know.
believe
Like,
that-
I'm not saying it's a priority.
Look,
I'm not telling you,
What,
oh, like, oh,
okay.
let's.
So what?
Yeah,
what
you
do you
know?
what is a trans right to you?
Well, I like being
be
able
concrete.
to. Sure, yeah, like a trans right, in my opinion, is being able to get medical health care. I know we'll disagree on the puberty blockers. That's fine, but at least getting like hormone replacement therapy.
Right. Okay. I get
Being able
you.
to
Okay.
express themselves however they want, to not being
Yeah,
discriminated
I
against.
get what you mean. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, and this is part of the theoretical sort of underlying issues of gender ideology and the use of language to change reality. Right? We can say medical health care. Does it
Sure.
actually make this medical health care, or is there some bodily affliction it is solving? No, right? This is a thing in the mind. It is a feeling, and it is necessarily murky because of that. Okay. So
I have a question.
So here, that's one thing. So really,
Okay,
what you're
but, like, can I
talking
respond
about
to
when
one
you're
thing?
talking about a trans right is the right for men to use women's bathrooms, the right for men to enter women's sports, the right for let's see, like forcing people to acquiesce to people's what they want to be called, etc. A right.
I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. You sound like a Republican right now. Like all these are Republican talking points.
What
Like,
if you're
and-
wrong and they're right on this issue, though? Like every time I say this, like there's some deflection to go away from the point. Like there's never an actual answer to what I'm saying, right?
What do you?
Let's say that I don't get to force you to what to think, and you don't get to force me what to think. Okay? Does that sound fair?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
You don't have.
For
Yeah.
me as a
whatever.
Marxist, material reality is what creates everything else, right? Thought
Okay. So
is actually only
okay.
reflection of material reality and can be either concrete or abstract, right? You can live
So
in
I
the world
think-
of abstract,
I
but you
think the
can't make
point
me
that-
do it.
So I think the issue that I'm seeing right here is that because it's like a mental issue, or it's something in your mind, therefore it's not material, therefore we shouldn't focus on it. Is that kind of the train of thought here?
No.
So
I focus on the class struggle because it is of dire importance for humanity. Like I'm
Okay,
not
yeah.
concerned about like
Sure,
which
sure.
bathrooms you want to use. I'm just not.
Yeah, no, I agree.
78% of Americans struggle paycheck to paycheck. My son doesn't have a future because of our ruling class. That's like where my mind's at. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, and my mind is there too, dude. Like, but I guess again, the sticking point is that as long as trans white aren't going backwards, I'm fine with not being like a priority. I don't want the ACP to prioritize trans rights or the healthcare that we'll disagree on, whatever. I just don't want to see it backwards. I don't want to see the rights that have been fought for, whether it's gay marriage or whatever, not being discriminated, not going backwards.
I get what you're saying. I don't understand why. See, this is my thing about this entire lot. And by the way, like this, we have to acknowledge the millions upon millions upon millions of dollars that go into these NGOs, the academic research, etc. But they always try to push this into homosexuality, right? When it really doesn't have anything to do with it. And to me, oftentimes it's very homophobic, right? Telling a boy who happens to be finding out that he's attracted to boys for whatever other reason, right? That actually his effeminate feelings make him a girl, and he's not just a regular gay dude that's kind of girly, right? Like, that's homophobic to me. And I've had plenty of other gay dudes tell me that's homophobic. But I'm
gonna be real with you, Pride. I don't think anyone is going up to a gay dude and being like, "Hey, you're slightly effeminate, therefore you're a girl." Like, no one's going up to that. No, that's not happening. Like, yes, I don't understand where you're getting this from. That's not happening.
Yes, it is, dude.
Where is it happening? You have to be trans.
That's what the whole issue is. Like, it's saying you feel effeminate, so you are a girl.
Oh my god, dude! I'm gay. Okay. I'm not being told like you have to be trans. Like, I can guarantee you, at least in my community,
that is what it is. Now, I'm not saying you specifically, but
I know.
If a guy feels effeminate, he can't just be an effeminate guy anymore. He has to be a literal girl. Does that make sense to you?
I think you're making up. I've never heard of these issues before. Like, this is the first time I've ever heard of these issues. And I've been in this community for like at least half a decade now. Like, dude, like, personally, I've never heard of these issues. And I think you're just making up problems that don't exist.
But here's the thing, brother. I don't want to like be disrespectful. That ain't me.
Sure.
Right. But you keep, like, every time I make a point, you say something that isn't addressing the point. Okay. Have you noticed that?
That's fair.
Like, you sound like a Republican. I've never heard this. Like, why can't you just answer the question? You know?
I guess it's the framing of the question that I disagree with. You know?
Well, you're the one who said, like, roll back trans rights and then talked about gay marriage. I don't understand what the two have anything to do with each other.
Oh, that's why. Okay, so that's the issue you have. Like, you don't want them to be together.
No, I just don't understand why they are.
I guess it's because the community is just close together. They share some of the same issues.
Well, I mean, all working class people share a ton of issues. Like,
and so do trans and gay people and bisexual people and whatever other
I don't see why but I don't see why like gay marriage has anything to do with what you called a trans right. Like, I was trying to get you to give me like a concrete example of a trans right, right? And you said gay marriage, but that's gay people. That's a whole nother bag of bananas, as I say, right?
You could be trans and gay. That's the issue.
Sure, but you can be trans and not gay.
Yes. So you can also be trans.
Why that's like, that doesn't have anything to do with what you call trans rights. Like,
okay,
I don't understand what you're asking to be rolled back. Like, here's the thing, like, or you're saying it won't be rolled back. I'm sorry.
No. Like, I'm just worried that, and so whenever it comes to trans people and gay people, you know, both of the communities did have the same issues, you know, for the last, 50 years. You know, they've had the same struggles. They've been in arm in arm together in protests. And when it comes to trans rights, like being able to go on HRT or all these things,
I think a lot of the time liberal activists take ownership of the entire gay population.
But they're fucking wrong.
Yeah, well, obviously, but like, I don't see these as like, I try to analyze things for what they are, right? I think that we can't say that, like, yes, liberals all have liberal causes, sure. But like, we have to understand all aspects, and we have to understand the reactionary nature of the ideology itself. And that's not saying people that sort of believe one thing or another are reactionary. It's saying the ideology itself embodies reaction for our era. Like, like literally like we're talking about the ruling class's ideology at this point. You know what I mean? So like to me, it's like I don't understand.
But being trans, I mean, a trans person is going to have the same issues that some rural person in Minnesota is going to have, But
not necessarily.
but there's still a struggle.
Look at Bruce Jenner. Bruce Jenner decides that he's a woman and wins Woman of the Year.
Oh, you mean Caitlyn Jenner?
Right. Well, he decides he's a woman, becomes Caitlyn Jenner, and then he's woman.
He didn't decide that
Woman
shit.
of the Year, whatever. Right. These
Sure.
are not like it's being trans was not a problem for Bruce then Caitlyn Jenner, was it? Actually, it worked out to his then her benefit, didn't it?
I don't know. Like,
Definitely.
What do you mean? Are you saying that it's a bourgeois thing?
Got all kinds of fame after he was finished because he'd ran through his ability to be an athlete.
So you're saying that you're saying that. Hold on. You're saying that Caitlyn Jenner.
I gotta wrap this call because it's taking a long time. At the end of the day, look, there's no rights for working people that will be rolled back in the American dictatorship of the proletariat. There just won't be. It's going to be a chaotic time, and we're going to have a lot bigger problems than what pronouns people are using, what bathrooms guys want to use. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be a breakdown of the state.
I agree,
and we have.
I agree.
We really got to end this sort of allowing the ruling class to so severely push ideology at us under the guise of calling it revolutionary. That's my real issue here.
So in my opinion, last thing I'll say before I go, I don't think being trans is like inherently revolutionary, whatever. It's just a struggle for people who are trans, and that struggle, is just an additional struggle to them having to pay rent and paying, whatever loans they have, whatever the issues that the ACP does want to fight for. Like, I think it's awesome. Like, keep fighting, man. I love it.
Well,
and
let me interrupt you real quick. I'm sorry. I have to because I'll forget it if you keep going. Sure. What we fight is against the actual causes of those problems. The alienation that causes someone to actually accept that their body is wrong. That's what we call hyper alienation. And that's a product of fully financialized capital, right? It's not like
are you saying that? Go ahead. Wait, are you saying that capitalism causes people to be trans?
Yeah, of course. It causes people to have a disconnect with their humanity. That's what Marx called alienation.
Oh, wow, that's a new one. I've never heard that before.
That's one of Marx's.
Yeah, I would disagree because before capitalism became the dominant, economic system, there were trans people. So I don't understand where this is coming from.
It's I see where you're going. Okay, so Marx, and this has to be the last thing we talk about it. We got more.
Yeah, sure.
I apologize, but call back. We can keep talking about this, brother. No big deal. So one of the first things Marx talks about is alienation. What makes us human is our labor, right? Our ability to look at nature, hold a changed image of it up in our minds, and then actually act upon nature and change it. During the capitalist epoch, right? The stable connection we have with that beforehand is torn asunder. We're alienated from our humanity. We must sell our labor, and the product of it gets owned by someone else. Now, as capitalism continues on, right, this changes form and grows in its severity to the point where we are right now, so far past the beginning of generalized commodity production, that we're at a fully monopolized, fully financialized capitalist system where we're multiple layers removed from the product of our labor, where a lot of us are doing labor that is actually pointless, just to create consumerism. And that's like a whole nother bag of bananas. That is a disconnect from our humanity. And that maybe there were people who had different gender expressions in the past, but that causes and influences the form it takes in our society right now. And not just that, but all forms of alienation, right?
So, okay, yeah, I'm
Hold
gonna
on.
be real with you. I don't.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't
That'll
think.
be the last thing, brother. Please call
Yeah,
back
yeah, no,
another
of
time.
course.
We'll get to some more calls. That was actually really good. I love when people disagree in a polite and like well-meaning manner. I really
Yeah,
think
no, of course.
more people need to do that.
The last thing, you know, I think I don't have the brain power. I do agree that, you know, there is a lot of alienation in the world through capitalism. You know, I don't think we disagree on that. I just don't think it's that deep when it comes to, you know, people being trans or having a different gender expression, blah blah blah.
It's that deep for everyone.
Personally, yeah, sure, yeah. I mean, it's deep, but I don't think it goes down to our like how we want to see ourselves in through gender. You know, I think people are naturally trans, you know, through some biological factors, however that works, not sure. But people are trans. You know, they express it when they're kids. They go through a psychiatrist, maybe a therapist to determine it. All right, kid's trans. I don't think it's that deep, you know.
I think
But
it is.
not
I
deep.
think, and I
Okay,
think you're
you know,
you're sort of
okay.
like you're ending before analyzing how we get there. You know what I mean? And that's the issue for me.
Sure.
We need to understand how this has become such a topic in our society as our ruling class gets to where it is. It's not just natural. It cannot be when it is this big of a discrepancy between where it was and where it is. But that's got to be it for tonight, brother. Thank you so much for your call.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Call back anytime.
Bye.
Look, I think that we often forget how to sort of interact with each other, especially on this. Like, give this guy a hand. Look, he disagreed and he did it respectfully, and that's really all we need. We can keep going until he gets it, right? A lot of people just aren't, frankly, because of how saturated the ruling class has us with this stuff. A lot of people haven't heard a criticism of it yet, and that's why, you know, like every time I started making a point, he couldn't address it, right? And I don't fault him for that. That's fine. Anyway, who's next, Sebastian? Who do we got up next? That took a while. We're like already at an hour and a half.
Hey, yeah, sorry, I was just managing the callers. But
yeah,
the
brother,
next
what's
caller
up?
should be Joyce, who just had a question on like your definition of like queer theory and stuff like that.
I love your definition game. All right. What's up, Joyce? Are you there? Uh-oh. I hope
Hello, yeah.
Joyce didn't die on us. Are you there, Joyce? Oh, Joyce. There's Joyce.
Am I there? Me?
Yep. What's up, Joyce?
I'm just having a little bit of technical difficulty.
No problem.
I'm here. Let me move into here. There we go. Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm really glad that you guys are finally choosing to address the topic of queer ideology and queer theory up front. You guys have been sort of tiptoeing around it for a while. And I think you guys have been saying things for a long time that have been sort of tipping us off about where you guys are going to be on queer theory. I'm an openly gay man. I often refer to myself as a queer person, as a queer man. And so this is an important issue to me. And I've been listening to the chat tonight. And unfortunately, I'm very concerned by quite a few different things that you've said, including the way that you defined queer and also the different things that you've said.
Let's start there. What is the issue with the definition of queer in queer theory? Because that's all I was talking about.
Yeah, so if you could real quick just give us a refresher of what your definition of queer is.
It's not my definition. So this is in the founding sort of theoretical texts of queer theory, what they call in the academy queer theory. which has nothing to do with gay people, right? It's about
No,
queering
that's incorrect.
things.
Go
No,
on.
this is according to the theory. All right, so
What
maybe you talk about
you-
yourself as a queer person. That's fine. I don't care. I'm talking about, you know, Michel Foucault, Judith Butler, etc. Right? So it's about the inherent oppression of binaries and social mores, right? So to quote unquote queer something is to break those down in order to liberate the individual from them. That's the long and short of it. It's tied up in postmodern nothing is real theory as well, because it comes out of postmodernism, but that's the basic gist.
Yeah, okay, sure. I don't deny that anything that you've just said about what's referenced in those literatures says that that is what the definition of queer is. I'm
No,
also
queer
just here to tell
theory,
you.
the way they use it. Big difference.
Yeah, sure. And I'm also just here to tell you that queer people use the word queer colloquially to refer to themselves as a group. And that includes lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex people, and a few different other things that, frankly, even myself are not as versed as I should be in all the different things that maybe people refer to themselves as. And so whether or not you choose to like define queer as the living, breathing body of people who are alive today, or some definition that a pedophile wrote over 100 years ago, like this is a fundamental problem. Like, you are insisting on a definition to begin the conversation that is completely disconnected from the lived realities of working people today.
I think that the reason the word queer came about, rather than just people saying, hey, I'm gay, whatever, has two sort of causes. One is it used to be a derogatory term, right? Two,
Still is.
queer
It still
theory
is.
in the academy. Now, you can't sort of dismiss queer theory and this sort of hyper individualism, which is also a part of gender ideology and other modern bourgeois ideologies, as disconnected from this.
Hyper-individualism
And you
has
can't sort of
infected
just
every single part of American
you
life.
gotta let me finish,
No
buddy.
part of American
You
life is
gotta
individualism.
let me finish, man. So
Okay.
you can't disconnect those two, right? And you can't
don't.
sort
Go
of
on.
just like insist word A means B in every situation. What I'm doing is giving you a contextual use of a word, because all word use is contextual. There's no such thing as a sort of like static definition that exists for all times and places, you know?
Yeah, sure. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We shouldn't stick the definition of queer to a definition that Foucault wrote over 100 years ago, or whenever they were writing. That's what I'm saying. I
It's
agree with that.
a lot
So
sooner than 100 years.
So when I say I'm a queer person, what I mean is I'm a part of a group of people colloquially referred to as lesbian, gays, bisexuals, and transgenders.
Okay, but here's my thing is like, sure, that you can use a word, whatever. I mean, we don't even need to use the word queer. We could call it pizza. We could call it computer monitor. As long as I know what you mean, it doesn't matter. Right?
Okay.
So now that you know what I mean, and I'm using a specific contextual thing, it should be changing the way you look at what I'm saying, right? Because I'm not like, this is why I sort of mentioned in my opening rant that they often try to force sort of an ownership of everyone who is gay, right? But even you would obviously tell me you're not in a community with every single gay person. That would be crazy, right? You don't represent gay people. You represent you and the people that you know and interact with. There's not much else you can represent, you know?
I would disagree with that use of the word community, actually. You know, I think in some respects, community is such a broad word that it could be used to describe the community I refer to as the queer community, without meaning that, like, I literally live and work with these people every day. in the same way that I could, if an alien race came by spaceship to the planet Earth, say, we are in a community here on planet Earth, and refer to ourselves as a community here on Earth. To those aliens, like we don't have to be like, oh, this is like a problem to use the word community like that.
Yeah, we can just use our common sense, I know what you mean, but I would also say that like there are a lot of gay people who don't feel the way you do, and you don't get to sort of claim representation of them.
I don't know. What I get to do is to provide political leadership to them through my political action as a public queer, openly queer man.
Yeah, but they haven't elected you. They haven't decided that you're their leader, right?
That's not how leadership works. You provide leadership by taking action. You don't wait for someone to give you permission to be a leader. That's not how leadership works.
So, okay, that's interesting to me. So for you, like to lead people, you can just kind of take it. I don't understand what you mean.
I mean, yes, as communists, we're all about seizing the means of production. So yes, that would be like the appropriate under certain circumstances.
Yeah, but
the appropriate thing to do is to seize power and to just do things in the name of people who you care about, in this case, the queer community.
Yeah, but no. You don't do things in the name of them without their permission. You need to win their support first.
Yeah, sure. I understand that. I've been an elected union leader.
Right. That's why I'm saying, like, you don't. Nobody has made you their leader. The way you presented it was that you just took leadership. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It sounded wild.
Yeah, as a member of the community, it's my job to speak up and speak about things intellectually speaking as a part of my community. Do you think that I have less of a right to speak about the LGBT community than you do as a straight white man speaking about queer theory this evening?
I love when people talk about straight white. That's funny.
That's just what you. I didn't
you should have said cisgender too. It's just more of the cliche, you know.
we're both cisgendered men, so that doesn't really matter.
No, it's not about having less or more of a right. You told me that leadership is about taking action and not winning the support of the people you want to lead. So I'm a communist. I believe that the working class must be rallied in its own interest to lead itself. The Communist Party isn't like you gotta not interrupt me, man. You gotta. Hold on, you can talk, I promise. So the Communist Party as the idea is concretizing is not some like group that comes down from on high or outside and declares leadership over people, right? The Communist Party is instead the organized, most advanced section of the working class in order to actually concretize as that party and become a full-on like communist party with power and the sort of organized proletariat. It must win the support of the people that it seeks to sort of represent. You can't just sort of say, well, I'm working class, therefore I get the right to speak for working class people. Even if you're like, I'm from the working class. I don't know if you are, but let's say you're from the PMC. I don't get to say I represent the working class more than you because you're from the PMC. Neither of us have won that support. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't know. I don't like the way that bourgeois theory claims ownership over giant sections of society or even small sections of society. That's just me.
Sure. I don't think that including transgender people within the category of queer and having the label of LGBT is like an oppression of trans people to include them in something they didn't ask to be included in.
Oh, I didn't say anything about oppression.
Sure.
All I said is I don't think you have been you have won the support to speak for anybody other than like you and the people you know, maybe.
I mean, yeah, there's no gay Congress. So like, are we supposed to just like never talk about gay stuff?
I didn't
You
say
know,
that
because there's
either.
no like
Look,
elected
if
gay
you're
person.
correct, you'll be able to win the support of people. I
I'm
think
not.
the
I mean,
last.
I've already won several union elections, so I
That's
have won
fine
the
in a
support of
union.
working
That's
class
fine,
people.
but that's not you seeking to represent gay people, which is what you were telling me you did, right?
There were queer people in my union, so I did represent queer people. Yes.
Come on, man.
What?
You were telling me you represent gay people.
Yeah, in my union, there were several transgender members. There were openly gay members. There were several lesbians. What are you talking about? In my union, there were
Okay,
queer
we'll
people in
move
my
past that
union,
one.
so I
That's fine.
represented them.
That's fine.
I don't know
We'll go
what the
past
problem-
that one. Look,
you literally represent queer people when you represent people in a union because queer people exist. Like, I don't know what your question is.
I don't have one. Don't worry about it, man.
I mean, I'm
You
sure
got
there are
anything else?
unions where queer people are not existing in that particular union, but like almost every union has queer people in it.
Okay. Do you got anything else for us, brother?
Yeah. So you said something about how did we get to this large increase in the number of transgender people that are happening, and you seem to imply towards the end of the last call that being transgender was a phenomenon of capitalism. I think all your
in the
viewers
form
should
it's
go to
in
the
now.
Wiki
Wait.
first.
You gotta hold on. In the form it's in now, yes, it has to be because capitalism is what creates it.
Capitalism creates transgender people.
It must it has to create everything within capitalism. So this
No,
form of
transgender
any
people have
phenomenon.
always existed.
So, like,
That predates
for example,
capitalism by far.
well, you gotta let me talk, man. For example, this form of the class struggle is not bourgeoisie versus feudal lords. It is proletariat versus bourgeoisie. Rather, you see what I mean? Like this form
No.
of the universal class struggle. So, yes, of course, capitalism and alienation it causes people to not be whole, right? Our humanity has been severed from us. That's very, very basic Marxism.
Yeah, but I'm not sure what that has to do with the phenomenon of being transgender.
Because
Just like what that has to do
it
with the
cleaves
phenomenon
you
of being
from
gay.
yourself,
Like,
right? That's what alienation
no,
is. Do you
no,
know? So
being
let me
trans
ask you a
is a
question.
completely
Let me ask you a
phenomenon.
question. What
Being transgender is a
is
completely natural
humanity? What is humanity?
What is humanity?
Mhm.
Could you be more specific, please?
Yeah, what makes us human?
Like the like being human. Like you're born a human.
Okay, according to Marxism, it's labor,
Okay.
right? Because Marxism is
Okay.
a developmental form of logic, right? So we don't ever see
What?
anything as is, as it exists, like static or cut off from other things. We see it instead as being a product of the necessity of how it develops. So everything leading into what creates me right now as Noah talking to you, that matters. That gives character to the Noah you're speaking to, right? Even before I cognize a thought, there's an entire history that has led me to this moment, led me to what these thoughts are, how my way of approaching problems, etc. That's what Marxism is. It's dialectical or developmental logic applied from a materialist lens. So necessarily, from the Marxist point of view, everything is characterized by the society giving rise to it. There's a famous quote from Marx where he says that what is it? Consciousness is not oh God, I'm gonna butcher it. Someone please put it in the chat. You know what I'm talking about, right, Sebastian? Come in and tell me the quote from Marx. I'm gonna it's like no, that's not it. Thank you, everything, but that's close. The men make their own history, but not as they please.
Is it it is not consciousness of the men
Yes.
that determines their being, but on the contrary, their social being that determines their consciousness.
Precisely. And this is the problem with all postmodern thought, including what is called queer theory. That is exactly what Sebastian just said from Marx. It is not the consciousness of man that determines their being, right? Which is what the queer theory would say. It's your consciousness that must determine your being. Marx says, on the contrary, it is your social being that determines your consciousness. So the way your current form of society exists gives character to the form of consciousness that you have. And that includes class and epoch and country and all that kind of stuff. You see where I'm going with that?
Oh, I have no idea what this has to do with being transgender.
Well, you said that it is ahistorical and flat.
No, I
and
didn't.
I'm saying that
Said it
different
was
things
historical.
arise in different forms according to all of this stuff.
I did not say it was ahistorical. I said trans people have always existed.
That's basically saying it's ahistorical. I'm saying
That's
there are
not
always different
what
forms of things
ahistorical means. No.
according to this kind of stuff.
Ahistorical means that it has not to do with history, and transgender people have always existed, so they are a part
Definition
of history.
mongers, man. I'm telling you. Okay.
Yeah,
Look,
I mean,
you gotta remember what we said about definitions at the beginning. Actually, do you know what Engels said about definitions?
I would love for you to tell me.
He called them the death of scientific thinking. He said that
Yeah,
we should
I mean,
only use
that's-
them preliminarily when we do not forget what their drawbacks are. If we want to
So
fully
why are you using
understand
a
a thing,
definition of
we
queer
need to
from over 100?
understand it from its lowest form to its highest.
So
So
why are you using a definition of queer from 100 years ago? Like,
when do you
honestly,
think
like,
Foucault was
you're
writing?
drawing some really wrong conclusions about transgender people and what queer theory is. Like you have this assertion that the entire queer movement right now is entirely like based from liberal NGOs and the funding that those things happen.
It
and
is.
if I could speak for just a moment, because you've been speaking for quite a while.
It is. But that's okay.
Been,
When do you
hold
think
on, you've
Foucault
got-
was writing?
hold on, let me speak. Please
When
let
do
me
you
speak.
think Foucault was writing? You keep saying it was 100 years ago.
Please let me speak.
When do you think
So you've
Foucault
got-
was writing? Do you think it was 1924?
I don't know. I
Well,
don't know.
1925 was 100 years
if
ago.
I could speak. Could I please speak?
It just seems
Could
like
I
you're
please
talking about a lot of stuff that you've never looked into.
Am I
I
going
mean,
to
I
be
don't
allowed
mean
to
any
speak?
offense by that. Like, here's the thing.
So I'm not going to be allowed to speak.
Bourgeois NGOs are what pushed this. They're what popularized it.
No,
And it's fine if you like
being a
that.
transgender
That is the
person,
fact, right? That
what
is
are you
the
even
material
talking about, though?
reality of the
Pushed what?
situation.
Transgender people exist. What
That's
you
fine.
talking about?
No
You're
one
talking
cares.
You're talking about the co-option of the queer movement and queer people existing. You're talking about the commodification of queer people. I want to say that transgender people exist outside of capitalism, and you say no, they are a commodity of capitalism. They wouldn't exist if we didn't have capitalism. Like that's what the danger of what you're getting at. Like you're saying they don't exist.
You have
outside of
barely been
capitalism.
listening to my whole thing, haven't you?
I've been listening for a long time, and you haven't been letting me speak at all, or asking the questions that I actually came here to ask. Can I actually ask a question for once instead of responding to the things that you're asking?
You gotta actually listen, because what you just said gave away that you didn't listen to the whole thing about not the consciousness of man and all that, and form and content, universal in particular.
Oh goodness.
Go ahead, ask your question. Then we got to move on, brother.
Okay, so you wanted the last caller to explain the increase in the number of transgender people recently.
Well, with a caveat, right? If it is not based on the millions upon millions upon millions of dollars that the ruling class has been spent pushing things like queer theory through NGOs like the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Open Society Foundation, USAID, the National Endowment for Democracy. I mean, I could go on for hours listing them, right? But I won't. If it is not these things where we have actual evidence of them pushing it, where does it come from?
It comes from those places and also from the agitation of working class queer people.
So it's
both of those
spontaneous.
things. I'm not denying the existence of those things.
So it's spontaneous, you say. So Here's my thing.
No, I'm saying it's both. What are you
We
talking
have-
about? I just admitted it's what you said it is. That
Well,
exists.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm
I
agreeing
mean,
with you.
to a certain extent, it has to always be one reinforcing the other, right? But I think there is
Agreeing with
one
you
of
that
those.
this
I think there is
yes.
one of those that is massively more powerful than the other. I think that
Yeah, of
working
course.
class
That's
people
what- yes.
have agitated for years and years and years and years for all sorts of different things. And I think I'm just skeptical that this is the one thing that the ruling class was like, yeah, we'll take this one on and embody it ourselves. Right? I
working
find that
class people
unlikely.
rioted. I mean, working class people rioted at Stonewall, including transgender people. And then after that, we see, what you're talking about, this steady sort of increase in co-option and commodification of the queer movement in order to make it sterile, in order to make it liberal, in order to make it nonsensical and postmodern. Where
Sure. Okay.
those queer people still exist underneath it and are not a part of that and are being co-opted by that. And so
Okay,
my
I can see
point is
that.
that the whole transgender movement is not a product of this thing. There's just a correlation between these liberal NGOs promoting its acceptance and the public acceptance of it. In the same way that in the past, there were fewer quote unquote left-handed people, and then there was a curve upward in the percentage of left-handed people because it became more socially acceptable to be left-handed. And the change is not an actual like manufactured increase in the number of left-handed people. It's simply that we were recognizing that left-handed people existed and they were
Actually,
being more
that's not
open
true.
about it.
The left-handed thing is not true. They simply stopped enforcing like doing things like writing with your right hand in schools.
Also, if you had
Exactly.
millions of
Yeah,
dollars
and we
of
also
NGO
stopped
money,
But here's the
doing
thing.
general things on
Here's-
some level to
okay.
oppress queer
Yeah,
people in
I
general.
get what you're
society,
saying. Hold
so
on.
queer people are being more open.
I get what you're saying, and I mean it's plausible, right? It's plausible, but there comes a point where effect becomes cause in every development, right? Every single one that's ever existed. Effect becomes its own cause. That's just how developments happen. At a certain point, usually the generation line.
You said a lot more
You-
than that earlier
You
in
got
the
it.
show,
You
bro.
got to
You
hold
said
on.
there's
Hold on.
queer people here.
Hold on.
You
Let
said
me
there's
make
queer
my
people
actual
out here.
point.
Let's
You
get
notice
people
how I
to
let you
trans.
make your point when you're just
You
kind
did,
of
you
gibbering.
are,
I
but
gotta
not really.
move it along, but you got to let me make my actual point. So this could be plausible, right? But effect becomes its own cause going forward. That's what always happens. At a certain point, the liberal NGOs took whatever there was and made it their own, even if you're right. And I doubt that. I think the militant gay movement of the 80s is a different thing than the PMC movement of today, the one that sort of claims to be left wing, right? I think
Okay,
these are
well,
two
I'm a
different
militant.
things.
I'm a
I think-
militant working class queer person who's telling you that you and the ACP are leaving working class queer people behind with this line. It's reactionary, bro. You've said a lot worse in the last hour of this show about how there's like you agreed with the fascist trans panic movement, bro. You endorsed ideas.
You're using a lot of buzzwords, and we gotta dissect them.
I'm not using buzzwords, sir. I'm a college-educated scientist.
You have been using a lot of fascist move. What? Hold on. Slow down. Okay. I was trying to make a point, and you interrupted me. Now, at a certain point, the ruling class, even if we say you're right, and like I said, I doubt it, but we can say you are. The ruling class owns this. You gained acceptance. You have the entire ruling class on your side. Right? I mean, you can't deny that at this point.
No.
How do you not?
Thank
you got City.
I'm from Nebraska.
Is flying your flag.
Was my governor,
City
and he's currently my
flying
senator.
your flag. Explain that for me.
Sir, there are Republicans in my state of Nebraska that
how
openly
Citigroup
say
flies your flag, and the ruling class is not on your side on this issue.
You said all of them.
Explain how Citigroup
You said
flying your
all of
flag
them.
does
Citigroup
not.
is on my side.
The ruling class.
Is Citigroup all of them?
Side. Why can't you answer that
Citigroup
question?
all of them?
Why can't
I just
you answer
did.
that simple
Citigroup
question?
is on my side. I can
Why
explain
can't you
it. They're on
answer
my
that
side.
question?
You're being dishonest.
Why can't you answer the question?
You're being
Answer
dishonest.
the question. Citigroup.
I did. I did answer the
Citigroup.
question.
Go.
They're commodifying queer culture. Answered.
Explain how
Answer the question.
Citigroup isn't on your side. Whether
I
they're
agreed with you that
commodifying
they
it or
are.
not, it doesn't
I
matter.
agreed with you they are. I agreed with you that they are.
There you go. You and the ruling class
Yeah.
agree. You are on their side, and
You
you
said
wonder why
all of them.
communists are
You
skeptical
said
of you.
all of them.
And you
You really
wonder why
think there are
communists are
not
skeptical.
Republicans?
You gotta stop interrupting me. I'm gonna start muting you if you
You
don't.
weren't interrupting me.
You gotta stop. Now, you wonder why communists are skeptical with a person whose major point, the one thing that you care about, is how you agree with the ruling class.
What?
You just admitted they're on your side on this. And this is your issue. This is your red line. This is what made you just call me a fascist.
Oh, I did not call you a fascist. I said you're endorsing the trans fascist panic.
I don't even know what a trans fascist panic is. The way I see it, fascism is a phenomenon of the ruling class as its impossibility comes up to it, right? And it goes to extremes in order to socially engineer and hang on to power as the contradictions inherent in the bourgeois form of society come to a head. I think we're approaching that. And I think all of these sort of modern hip bourgeois theories are part of it. So my thing is, you admit that the ruling class and you agree. I see the ruling class as getting more and more fascist. And that makes me very worried that this is your red line. Look, no one in the Communist Party cares if you're gay or not. We don't. There are plenty of gay people in the party. Nobody
You care if they're trans.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
You care if they're trans.
There's trans people in the party too. Stop allowing the ruling class to set you against communists. That's what we care about.
You are against transgender people, bro.
What are you talking about? When did I say that?
You just spent the last several hours on this program telling the last person who was on why transgender people shouldn't be associated with the gay movement.
No, I just said I don't understand how they were associating these two things. I don't see the connection.
Yeah. You said, what does gay marriage have to do?
No, these were two very different things. You're generalizing a particular conversation. And this is so common with liberals, and it's exhausting.
You said that.
It
you
really
said the
is.
question, what does gay marriage have to do with trans rights? That's just something you said.
Question. I don't, how does that's nothing to do with the transgender theories, right? Gay marriage is about gay people. Plenty of straight transgenders, right?
No, there's a gay man who could marry a transgender man, and that would be a gay marriage. And if gay marriage was illegal, they couldn't get married. That's how it would affect transgender people.
Okay, but that affects people who are not transgender. It's not a transgender right. That was the point I was making. Are we back to this?
I just told you. If a transgender man marries a man, that's a gay marriage that they can't do if gay marriage is illegal.
Okay, who's talking about making gay marriage illegal? I don't understand what you're talking about.
Republicans are doing that.
I don't see that, but okay, I don't care.
The Idaho legislature introduced a bill to ban gay marriage.
Okay, go fight
my
it.
Senator has made statement. My senator Pete Ricketts here in Nebraska has made statements supporting that legislation.
Okay. I don't know what that has to do with me. I don't get it.
You made the point that why you were asking why the trans movement is associated with the gay movement.
No, that is not. You see how you keep changing what I said?
No.
Okay, that's going to be it for the night. Thank you so much. Wow.
Thanks, Noah. Unblock me on Twitter, you fucking coward.
What a fucking weirdo, man. You know, it's like as I am nice and say thanks a lot. This is why I did this. They just go around and around in these silly circles, and everything you say they're like, oh, here's something else that I get mad at when it's nothing. Like, I don't know. I don't care what you're like. Why do you think this has anything to do with me? I like the one actual substantive issue was, yes, he agrees with the ruling class. That's the only thing we were able to actually agree on. What's up, Sebastian? I'm sorry you had to sit through that, man.
It was a trip.
Yeah. I block everyone who like is a bot or seems like a bot. So I'm assuming this guy was like one follower or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, oh, yo, no way. This guy is not a college educated scientist.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
No
Should I get
wonder.
the next call ready or?
No wonder. Oh, Jesus. All right, everybody. Thank you for another awesome show. I thank you to our one caller and not our other one. The first guy was awesome. Why can't people be more like that? I don't get it. Like, why does it's like you can tell the working class guy who's just like, yo, let's talk about this, from the PMC fucking liberal who's like, meh. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's night and day, the difference. Night and day. We're gonna go out the same way we always do. Everybody have a great week. We will see you next time, I think.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken, now they must give. And end the vanity of nations. We've but one earth on which to live. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama, in the streets and in the fields. We stand unboundly for their armor, we defy their guns and shields. When we fight, provoked by their aggression, let us be inspired by life and love. For though they offer us concessions, change will not come from above. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International